welcome. This is room CC9, the side event on ensuring a people-centered and just clean energy transition. If you're not supposed to be in that room, I highly encourage you to stay. This is probably be the best 1.5 hours you could spend. So anybody, just please stay on here. This will be extremely important. To kick us off today, we have 2 opening remarks. I will first have the honor to give the floor to actually the chair of the IEA ministerial meeting, U.S. Secretary for Energy, Jennifer Granholm. Please.
Great, thank you so much. Hello, everyone, again, and welcome to the 2022 IEA Ministerial Side event on ensuring a people-centered and just clean energy transition. My sincere thanks to Minister Dan Jørgensen for putting this together and Anders Hoffman for stepping in. And we're going to spend a lot of time at this ministerial discussing matters like how to best seize investment opportunities and knock down barriers to deployment and stop funding autocrats like Vladimir Putin. But ultimately, this clean energy transition comes down to people, to how to use these brilliant techniques and technologies to anchor people's local economies, to pay them family-sustaining wages, to lower their bills, to improve health. I'll just say this, few are more committed to this subject as a means to lift communities in need than my U.S. colleague, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who's over here. So glad to welcome you and see you here. Look forward to hearing your remarks. Senator Manchin represents many of the coal and fossil communities that have literally powered America for the past over a century and the world as well. And he'll tell you, I'm sure, that these communities boast the skills and the resources and the resolve to help power America and the world for the next century. And we want them to do that. So having had the privilege, by the way, of visiting West Virginia several times with him in the past year, I can tell you that the potential in these communities is matched by the enthusiasm of their residents. Senator Manchin's constituents are ready, and they're eager to be the backbone of America's clean energy economy as well. And President Biden knows this too. He believes that clean energy can be an engine of economic opportunity along with equity and environmental justice. In his very first week in office, President Biden took 2 steps to harness that engine. He established first the Justice 40 initiative, which pledges that 40% of the benefits from clean energy investments will flow to disadvantaged communities. And he kicked off an interagency across the federal government effort to lift up some of our most vulnerable coal and power plant communities and position them to play key roles in this clean energy future. And so since then, we have launched a whole bunch of new initiatives, and we've secured investments to demonstrate these clean energy technologies that are going to offer really skills-matched work to fossil energy workers. Clean hydrogen, for example, carbon and direct air capture, advanced nuclear, geothermal. And we've also joined or even agreed to lead international efforts aimed at building a global clean energy workforce that's as diverse as our planet is. We believe that with intentional, sustained support, people in every pocket of this planet will not only make it through this transition, they will thrive on the other side if we do this right. And that's based on I'll just say some personal experience. I was the governor of Michigan when the U.S. auto industry was on its knees. And I think, and we came out on the other side because we invested in diversifying toward an auto industry that is electrifying. I think that we'll see this in Pittsburgh as well when the United States hosts the joint clean energy ministerial and mission innovation ministerial in September. Pittsburgh is America's steel city. It's a living, breathing example of how a legacy economy can transform into a powerhouse for clean energy technology and innovation. But anyway, in the meantime, let me commend IEA Global Commission on its recommendations for opening the clean energy future to all of our people, which is, of course, the latest effort the IEA has taken up in this area. All of us know, and all of us who are in the IEA can see this enormous opportunity in clean energy, and we know the global market. This just kills me. The global market for these clean energy technologies will reach $23 trillion by 2030. $23 trillion. So who's going to take advantage of it, right? Who is going to, and where are those opportunities going to be placed? So, you know, the question is, it's a big opportunity, and how far and wide we spread the spoils and where they go to is really what we're here to talk about today. As the ministerial chair for this year, I wish you a productive and impactful discussion here. I look forward to hearing the ideas that flow out of it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Secretary, for a very sort of optimistic intervention and for sharing some of the places where it actually works. And I completely agree. It all comes down to people. I mean, this is the perfect scene setter for this event. I will now turn the floor over to IEA Executive Director, Fatih Birol. Fatih, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anders, and many thanks once again, Madam Secretary, for opening this session and also for chairing our ministerial meeting 2022. So many thanks to all the colleagues joining us here, and also warm welcome to all those of you around the world viewing this live stream. Many thanks, Anders, to you and to your Minister Jørgensen for putting this event together. In my view, the issue we discussed today is very much at the heart of clean energy and climate action. We always say the clean energy transitions are for people and about people. Our analysis shows, as Madam Secretary rightly mentioned, as a result of clean energy transition, we will see millions of jobs created. And this is much more than the jobs those will be lost. And not only the jobs will be created, but there's also the life of the millions of people around the world will be improved, thanks to the reduction of air pollution. I have colleagues from different parts of the world who have this problem of pollution. The quality of life will improve, but at the same time, we cannot only think of jobs created here, X million, jobs lost here, Y million. It is not a X minus Y, because the jobs lost somewhere else, jobs created somewhere else in many cases. So without finding a good solution to the potential job loss, we have no chance whatsoever to have a sustainable clean energy transition. So we have to recognize the risk of negative impacts on some people and communities when we have the clean energy transitions, and this is only to design them better in order to address this possible negative impacts. So it is the reason last year I convened the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions, and it brought together 30 energy and climate ministers, thought leaders, labor unions representatives, to consider how the clean energy transitions are truly people-centered and inclusive. I am thankful to Prime Minister of Denmark for leading this effort, and I am also seeing several members of the Commission with us today. We have Diego. Thank you very much, the Minister Mesa, Minister of Colombia. Of course, as Madam Secretary mentioned, Senator Manchin, thank you very much for joining to our Commission and coming to Paris today, and many others. Our Global Commission made 12 key recommendations based on the 1 year of discussion among the 30 members of our Commission, representing clear advice on how to ensure all policies are truly people-centered and inclusive. And these recommendations were launched just before the COP26 and are already having an impact. I heard it from many ministers. They are looking at very close and getting inspirations from that. Now, I would like to also here underline a new initiative I have convened, because throughout the process of the Global Commission, I was struck by the importance of the voice of labor and the growing importance of ties between labor and climate action. That is why I decided to convene a new Clean Energy Labor Council to foster dialogue between the IEA, our stakeholders, and the labor sector, a key and central voice in just transitions. This new Labor Council brings together labor representatives and civil society voices all over the world. We will hear in a few minutes the Secretary General of the International Trade Union Confederation, Sharan Burrow, together with the Secretary General of the Congress of South Africa Trade Unions, are co-chairing this new Clean Energy Labor Council. And these members of the Clean Energy Labor Council met for the first time 2 weeks ago and gave their perspectives on the key labor issues affecting clean energy transitions. Dear colleagues, we will continue to strengthen our work on this issue, supporting all of our members, partners, and beyond. We have already started important work with the 3 governments, India, Indonesia, and South Africa, to support them on the people-centered dimension of their clean energy futures, how we can design our clean energy transitions in a way to reduce the possible negative impacts to a minimum, and therefore they are successful. No transition, no clean energy transition should be, in my view, carried out despite the people, but with the support of the people to have a successful transition. We look forward to continuing to engage with all of you on this topic, and as such, I am looking forward to today's discussion. Thanks a lot again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Fatih, for your intervention. And then, well, honourable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, to set the scene, I think we're here to discuss our common mission to ensure that the just transition will happen as the world moves away from our addiction to fossil fuels. And I think when we look at it, I think the mission is even more important today than it was just a few months ago. As Fatih mentioned, the work on the Commission was launched just before the COP26, and Denmark, as the chair of the Commission, took a leading role in trying to sort of bring that voice into the COP26, and we did experience a lot of attention and a lot of emphasis was given to the just transition as part of the work at the COP. So I think this was just clearly highlighting the importance and the need for the IEA to prioritize this work in the future. For those of you who have not read the report, I can highly recommend it. It's full of a lot of very good examples, and it also highlights the fact that Fatih also just mentioned, that the clean energy transition will create millions of jobs at the macro level, but macro level really doesn't mean anything at the micro level if you're affected by it. So this whole idea that you know that sectors will decline, jobs will disappear, and companies will need to adapt. The purpose of all of this work is to do that in a way which is just, and to make sure that would be created new jobs for those, they would be trained and continued with the good lifestyle. Some people sort of put up that there's a choice between the two, that if you want to have economic development, if you want to create jobs, you shouldn't go down the green transition road. I think the work clearly showed that that's a false choice. I mean, you can do both, and there's many examples in the work that can back that. It's actually more than 150 different case studies that highlights that the 12 recommendation has been carried out around the world in many very different settings. If you allow me just to give one example, we have in the first categories, which is about design transition to maximize the creation of decent jobs. In Denmark, about a year and a half ago, we set an end date for exploration of oil and gas in the North Sea by 2050. This is a rather big industry in Denmark. A lot of people were affected by that. So there was a very clear commitment within the political agreement about the ending of the oil exploration, to have a creation of a carbon storage industry in the North Sea. So those jobs that would be created in that industry would be very good, would be quite similar in skill sets to the one that are closed down by the closing of the oil exploration. So we had that very much embedded into our policy. So I think that's just one example. We will hear many more from the ministers on the list. I think to set the scene, I will now turn to Secretary of the ITUC, Ms. Sharan Burrow, who will be joining us virtually.
Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very sorry not to be with you in person, and I hope it's not too noisy here. But, you know, the IEA has taken incredible leadership, and I particularly thank the US as host, but Denmark also, because you led the commission that I think was so vital to setting us on a different path last year. I want to acknowledge up front, of course, the tragedy of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but also the 60 other conflicts around the world that threaten the common security that people are dependent on. So the challenge for all of us is that even as we respond to the Ukraine crisis, but also to other crises in the world, interrelated crises, be they health, climate, inequality, then we can't lose sight of the world we have to shape if we're to ensure both people and planet are at the heart of not just a just transition, but indeed one that ensures our common security in the only home that we have. So the IEA's leadership with all of the ministers and indeed their leaders, their country leaders, is actually vital. I've become convinced that the IEA must be even a stronger, more central player in this vital transition. And we all need to be part of that, to act as the shepherds for that sustainable future that we know has to be created. Fatih, we very much appreciate your leadership and that of your team, because it will take partnerships to get this done. I think you took a leap of faith when you invited me onto the Commission last year. But I also think you've taken another leap of faith to actually set up a Labour Council. But that's going to be critical if we're to actually have the dialogue with employers, with ministers, with governments, and with other institutions that can get the job done. When I just listened to our US Secretary actually talk about 23 trillion, for us, that's jobs. If we get it right, that's jobs, jobs and jobs. And we know from the research that indeed I've done personally with the WRI, that for every 10 jobs in renewable energy, there's 5 to 10 in manufacturing. If they're good jobs, decent jobs, if they're, you know, in negotiations through bargaining with unions, if the rules of the game are there, then you get 30 to 35 extra jobs, and that's how you build communities. That's how we ensure community renewal. That means planning, and it means partnership, and it means dialogue. And in the current context, I just want to say 3 things. The first is that, again, the IEA already took a leadership role on energy efficiency. The panic that we've seen ensure, because indeed the gas disruption is still the topic of the day, can actually be overcome in large part, not just by scrabbling for other contracts, but actually recognising that gas is what it is. It's a transition technology to get us to that future of clean, renewable energy. And energy efficiency can do at least half of the job that we are scrabbling to fulfil, if we're serious. But it will again take all of us. It will take employers, it will take governments making commitment in their own buildings and their own activities, employers in theirs, and it will take people like myself and civil society and others to convince workers that they have to be part of this, and we're ready for that. But again, the IEA has a central role. The second thing is even a little less palatable. And again, the IEA has to actually make a real inroads with the support of their members and our support as community representatives in really bringing the fossil fuel companies to heel. I'm very angry with the oil and gas companies. I'll tell you why. They have the capital, they have the asset base, they have the technological know-how, and they have the skilled workforce. They are good jobs. We've bargained for those jobs over many decades. We've indeed fought for the kind of subsidies, the trillions of dollars of subsidies going in to fossil fuels to make it affordable and to create innovation, other range of policy areas, procurement, indeed, as such as well. Yet they haven't taken the rapid transition decisions they should. We have workers' capital in those companies as well, our pension funds, and their capex into renewables is still very low, even for the front runners. They can actually protect and grow jobs, but also grow the heart of stability in terms of the clean energy future we want. They must move more rapidly. And if they don't, then I think we have to think of radical solutions. Why shouldn't they be regulated utilities companies like other distributors? Why can't we actually look at what the rules of the game are that can curtail massive profit, which has distorted the ambitions of those companies through, the fiduciary responsibilities that should be, in fact, reviewed, right down to the distribution and the inclusion that prevents the scale of energy poverty that we're seeing today and will see even more rapidly as a result of the Russian invasion. We support the sanctions, but we want to make sure that people understand the ramifications of this on not just energy poverty, but commodities poverty as well. So we need to look at what policies that means, and they come back to how we deal with energy that underpins, it's like the tram tracks for all the other sectors that must transition. And my third point is that we were very pleased to see the COP focus on both just transition and energy transition. And the partnerships that got us to the support for South Africa, and we have to drive that through, has to now be extended to other countries. And I know that certainly in discussions with the IEA, but with France, with Europe, with other areas, that work is going on, but we need to consolidate that and make sure we are all not just making sure the capital gets there, but indeed that we are making it work. It also can't happen if it's not gender transformative, because when you look at both a broken labour market where we have 60% of workers working informally and we have to clean that up, we absolutely know that the majority of people living or dealing with the result of poverty in terms of, that informal community, whether it's in work or in homes, are women. And we must actually make sure that this transition is gender transformative. I won't go on with that at the moment, but I will remind you that for us, it's about jobs, jobs and jobs, good jobs. We know that we will have to look at displacement. We know we need secure pensions. We need support for early retirement, for a bridge to those pensions. But we also need income, reskilling and redeployment support for those workers that will be displaced, along with investment in community renewal. But I'm not pessimistic about finding the solutions. I'm pessimistic about the fact that if we don't work together, if we continue to look at vested interests, beginning with capital first, profit, all profit, back to the company and the shareholders, we will not make this transition. And of course, there are no jobs on a dead planet. There's no business on a dead planet. So it is in our interest to work together. And I salute the IEA and the members and the ministers for their leadership and pledge to work right alongside of you. It's a huge challenge, but we can do it.
Thank you, Sharon, for a very nice and powerful scene-setting intervention. I was very pleased that you had energy efficiency as number one on your three-point to-do list. I think it's one of the issues that Denmark like to flag as an important one, both for creating jobs, but also for the bigger energy transition. We will now start our sort of global tour of ministers, highlighting what will happen in their part of the world. I think we will be starting by going to Colombia. So, Minister Puyo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank Mr. Birol and Secretary Granholm for convening this important side event. I've been part of this Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transition over the last 18 months or so. So I think we've made significant progress in advancing, and I think the recommendations are very encouraging. I'm going to refer briefly to what we've done in Colombia, and I think we need to, take twofold approach, because Colombia, despite being a member of the OECD and being a middle-income country, will still have significant energy gaps to close. We have still about 3% of the population without access to electricity, and we still have over 1 million families that still use wood to cook. So we focus on the social and economic development actionable recommendations. And here, I think what is very important to do, especially for countries like us that we don't have, or we have a limited fiscal space, especially coming out of the pandemic, is to make sure that we have regulation in place and policies that will attract investment from the private sector to be able to close these energy gaps. So our plan for the last 4 years have been to, with public funds, bring electricity for the first time to about 100,000 families, and with regulation and policies, make sure that the private sector is able to match that and get to about 200,000 families with access to electricity for the first time. And this will take us to about half of what we need to do before 2030 to have universal access. And here, the examples could be allowing the distributors to have what we call virtual networks in Colombia. That means that you could include off-grid zones in the tariff and be able to, charge for that as part of the tariff that they have in our country. We're doing quite well. We're now, about 5 months left of government, and we are in about 75% of our goal. We'll be reaching the 100,000 families by the end of the government in August. And here is just to, in light, I was listening to the panel before, and one of the panelists was saying this is not only about just bringing a solar panel and a light bulb. It's about changing a life and about, allowing people to create business opportunities. And every time I go to one of the rural places in Colombia to bring electricity to these families, we can see how a family can start having businesses like, for example, purchasing milking machines, electrical milking machines, and make them, their business much more productive, starting poultry businesses, fishing, etc. So this is really a life-changing event for them. And on the second aspect is, decent jobs and worker protection as part of the clean energy transition. I think we have significant opportunities for social and labor reconversion. And an issue that we discussed greatly in Colombia is that the two provinces with the greatest potential on solar and wind happen to be the two main coal producers in Colombia. And these are regions in which the GDP of these provinces depend on 35 to 45% on thermal coal, a coal that is not burned in Colombia because it's exported as a raw material. And we need to be cognizant that the transition will take time, and we need to think about the jobs of these people. So making sure that we invest in this labor reconversion in these coal provinces is key for our country. In that respect, we've been doing a significant effort to massify the incorporation of variable renewable energy, but making sure that we have significant local jobs that are available to these families. So we'll continue to lead in South America. We've been able to increase our share of variable renewable energy in our matrix from 0.2% to about 12%. This creates investments of about $2.5 billion and about 40,000 jobs new. So that's some of the things that we're doing. We're also going into green hydrogen. I'll happy to talk about that later, but I'll just stop right there and happy to share some of the challenges and opportunities that we've been able to capitalize on this clean energy, on the social, economic development, but also on the decent job and protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and a lot of very nice studies coming out. I think just to highlight, I mean, one of the case studies we do emphasize here is the one in prioritizing universal access to clean energy, as you just mentioned. So I think that if it's in number 5, so if people want to read more, it's in there. I think we will now stay not too far away from Colombia. I think we will move on to Chile. Minister, the floor is yours.
Yes, there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to transmit our perspective of our new government into this very interesting discussion about the clean energy transition. I would like to start with a brief recapitulation of what we have achieved as a country and where we are at now in terms of the transition process, in which we've in fact benefited from our participation in the IEA's Global Commission on People-Centered Energy Transitions. Chile has committed to a zero carbon goal by 2050, and we have a new climate change law which gives a framework to these goals, to the NDCs, to the emission reductions and adaptations. We must bear in mind that 80% approximately of the country's emissions come from the energy sector. So we have achieved a significant advance in renewables in the past 10 to 15 years. That means now over 50% is renewable, and about 25% of our electricity generation is what we would call the new renewables. So we updated recently our NDCs on a social pillar, what we call the Just Transition and Sustainable Development, which commits to create a just transition strategy that protects the rights of the most vulnerable in the process of decarbonization of the energy. This decarbonization has been centered very much in the shutdown of the coal-fired power plants, which is crucial not only because of the reduction in GHG emissions, but also because of the reduction in local impacts that these power plants have in a reduced number of localities. They have been known for many years in Chile as sacrifice zones because of the amount of industry and pollution that is there. So there was an agreement within private companies and the energy minister in order to shut down by 2040, considering the environmental, of course, the safety, the economic implications. And now, currently, we're thinking that by 2025, about 65% of all the coal capacity will be available for shutdown. So that is very significant advance. Of course, this process will bring about considerable benefits for the local people in terms of reduction, but also significant challenges. People's health, of course, will improve, but there is the employment issue with about 5,000 direct and 10,000 indirect jobs. What economic activities will take the place of these coal power plants, and how we will manage the risks of the changes. These challenges have been revealed the need for a more comprehensive strategy. So we developed in the 2021, just recently, at the end of last year, a just transition strategy, which was published, in which the coal power plants shutdown is the starting point. Following or according in agreement with the recommendations, we did a participative process. We was focused on people, productive development, environmental development, and governance. For us, these are all very significant advances, and they are a very solid building ground. But I think our new government considers there are some additional issues we want to consider if we want to move forward concretely and live up to the expectations of the transition. We think that we need to make additions to ensure that people remain firmly in control of the transition process. Our global understanding of people-centered transition means exactly that people are in control. And for that, we need the adequate policy. What we are considering as the way to moving forward is we need to have a more systemic anticipation, transparency, decentralization, and also to consider the gender dimension very seriously. What do we mean by this? When we talk about systemic anticipation, we'll need to look at all the aspects of the transition simultaneously. Often we have made the mistake of looking at particular issues over the time, and we are focused opening up problems in other areas. And we have to have a forward-looking anticipation to make sure that as we go forward, we do not create future problems. Transparency is very important. There is a lot of concern that there will be, that the time we are taking is the adequate time, that the system is secure, that the jobs that will be created are the good jobs, like it was mentioned, and people are concerned that this process will be as expected, and we have to be transparent as it evolved. Decentralization is fundamental. The local perspective makes sure that the decisions taken in each site consider the particular conditions of those places. And finally, the gender dimension, which must consider the particular conditions of women in all this process, which for us is very significant. So these are all very relevant challenges. We expect to learn from other experiences, and we hope also to contribute our experience as we go along. And as such, we are very much looking forward to continued collaboration with the IEA on this in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for using that example. I mean, 10,000 jobs. I mean, many of these people will actually also have families. So, I mean, the complexity and the situation is quite large. And I think the way you sort of emphasize that we need to put people in control is an extremely good way to put it. So thank you for sharing that thought. We will now move actually north from Chile. So we'll be going to the US. So Senator Manchin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Minister Jørgensen. It is great to see you again and to talk about this fundamental issue. I'm truly honored to have been part of this commission, and I am grateful to Dr. Birol for the invitation to join. It's been insightful to hear how countries are undertaking this transition and navigating how to make it work for their communities so that nobody is left behind, and that is the biggest challenge that we have. I'm so proud of the recommendations that have come out of this body, and am confident that the lessons learned from our nation's experience will be put to good use. The meeting today is timely because my friend Secretary Granholm and several other members of the Biden administration came to my state of West Virginia just last weekend, and they understand what we are going through and the challenges that we have. A series of listening sessions were held around our state, and the interagency working group was based on coal and power plant communities, which is looking at addressing this very topic. So as a United States Senator representing one of the largest coal-producing states in the United States, and as chairman of the United States Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, preserving and creating new opportunities for our coal miners and coal communities is always front of mind and one of my top priorities. Creating new opportunities means that we need to use all of the tools that we have. And government investment, if done right, can be one of the most powerful tools. I believe it's our responsibility to meet fossil communities where they are and to use government incentives to drive a new opportunity to them, not the other way around. We need to direct incentives to places that have been or will be hardest hit by the energy transition and diversify the economies of those areas. One of the ways I've tried to do that is through a bipartisan advanced energy manufacturing tax credit proposal. We'll call that 48C. It would drive much needed investment in the U.S. energy manufacturing by investing $8 billion to retool, expand, and build new facilities that make or recycle energy-related products in the United States, with $4 billion of that specifically set aside for use in communities that have been coal mines closing or coal power plants shuttered over the past decade. Just a brief side note on that. We've been through this for many, many years, seeing a transitioning happening. My state still is one of the largest producers of energy from coal of any state in the nation. And with that, the transition cannot take place unless there's something to replace it with. That's the bottom line, because people get left behind, and they've been promised so much in the past, and nothing has come into fruition. I've also introduced legislation that will help replace fossil generation with advanced nuclear power, thus retaining resiliency and reliability, but transitioning to an emission-free technology that promotes job growth in all of these communities. I'm also working very hard to ensure that West Virginia becomes a clean hydrogen hub, to use our abundant natural resources in new ways for power generation and commercial applications. Rebuilding the U.S. manufacturing sector provides a pivotal opportunity to help displaced workers and their families reposition the U.S. in existing and new energy markets. People in states like mine that the energy transition has hit the hardest want meaningful work and are looking for a hand up, not a handout. They have pride and dignity, and they want to maintain that. So many times there's been programs come, says, we'll pay you for this, or displacement. Don't pay me, give me an opportunity. We'll produce. And that's the kind of proposals that would help the most. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that our world has shifted, and Putin's war in Ukraine has done this to us, made us all think differently than what we've done just a month ago. While the transition is well underway, I also believe there are opportunities for these fossil communities into the future, providing resources that we all desperately need and that we pivot away from Russian energy sources. I led a group of senators, bipartisan, and in one day we had 37 senators signing on in a bipartisan way. We haven't had anything unite us such as this. And I think I've not seen anything unite the world as the atrocities going on in Ukraine right now. We're going to do all we can to be of support and to help in every way possible. And it's brought our country closer together, too. Transition is underway, and I also believe there are opportunities, I really do, for fossil communities. Fossil's still going to be used, but can we do it cleaner? Dr. Birol will tell you the thing that we can do more to clean up the environment and the global climate is basically carbon capture. We have to unlock that box, the carbon capture utilization. If we do that, then everything else will come into play. It doesn't mean that we can do it in a clean way if we use existing and emerging technologies which create jobs in and of themselves while also helping us achieve emission reductions goals. So we're watching it very carefully on what we're doing and how we're using the new technologies. Hydrogen is a thing for me. I want to say this to you. I'm a little bit skeptic of the EU electric vehicles, EVs that everyone's moving to as rapidly as they are. I'm very much concerned about the supply chain. I am very much concerned about being totally relying on China to supply the necessary resources we need to have that transition happen. So I've been going down the path of hydrogen. Hydrogen is something we don't depend on anybody in the world. In America, we can do more hydrogen than about anybody. We, especially in my state, that is going to be unbelievable. And it's the horsepower that it takes to move the heavy equipments and move the people and do the job that needs to be done. All these issues must be in front of our mind as energy transition continues. We know that's coming. In coal states such as West Virginia, we've seen the transition for some time. We know that's going to happen. We just want to be part of it. And the taxes that we're trying to move with 48C tax credit, $4 billion of the $8 billion is directed directly to coal communities and coal-fired plants. Also, with the new TerraPower and the small nuclear reactors, we're able to plug and play, as we call it. As we close our older coal plants, we're able to bring in these small modular nuclear reactors and put them in place. That makes a complete reliability of the energy sector that we have and people are depending on. My state has been a net energy exporter for years and years and years, and we will continue to do that to help our great country. So I appreciate having the opportunity to speak today, and I'm anxious to continue to learn more. But the changes are going on around the world. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. And maybe allow me just to emphasize three of your extremely important points. I mean, this is really about sort of creating the opportunity to people. And I think you made that very clear. And that government investment done in a right way can be a very powerful tool in creating these opportunities. But you need to do them cleverly. And one way to do that is actually to listen to the people. So you need to sort of connect all of that in order to do this right. So thank you for that. Now we will shift continent. We will be going to Africa, more precisely, South Africa.
Thank you so much, Minister, and greetings to the ministers and the deputy ministers present. Firstly, I think I need to speak on the topical issue that is affecting us globally. You know, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I just want to indicate that it has affected us negatively, economically, both the globe as well as South Africa. But then it is then posing a challenge to the IEA to then shape the discussions of energy security in the world. And I'm hoping that they are going to take the challenge and address it with speed. Let me take this opportunity then to thank the team that has made this a success for us to come and share some knowledge with this diverse portfolio in this meeting with the ministers. And this meeting is taking place when our country as South Africa is at the critical point of ensuring security of electricity supply to support our economic reconstruction and recovery plan. And in our approach and interventions, we are trying by all means to balance the environmental considerations as well as issues of national importance. And we are also committed to the Paris Agreement as per our commitment on the national determined contributions. The program director, I think I need to give the meeting a snapshot on the state of affairs in South Africa. Currently, as the country, we are coal-based electricity generation, which is sitting at 75%, and we have developed in 2019 our integrated resource plan that is then coming with some of the interventions in ensuring that there is energy mix within the country. In support of these goals, we are working closely with the Presidential Climate Commission and together with the department to embark on a process of developing a just energy transition framework for the ministerial and energy sector in South Africa. And we have mapped all the just energy transition initiatives in South Africa with a view of creating a balanced, integrated, and enhanced effort that will enable the country to ultimately agree and to implement a programmatic and balanced approach to the transition that is inclusive and that does not leave anyone behind, including the vulnerable, youth and women. In closing, Chairperson, as the country, we want to take this opportunity to thank the International Energy Agency for the continuous support to the country and to call upon this important sitting to galvanize the necessary resources, financial, technically, and in terms of human capital development to ensure that the country and other developing nations can implement model people-centered energy transition. I thank you.
Thank you so much for many very interesting points. I think you also mentioned the Presidential Climate Change Coordination Commission. I think it's a very important tool, and it's also one of the ones that has been highlighted in the work of the Commission. Clearly a very good way to create the dialogue needed to do this very, very challenging transition you will have in South Africa. We will now, again, change continent, so we'll be going to Canada for the next intervention. Canada, the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. We heard from many of our colleagues earlier about the twin challenges that the global economy is facing. On one hand, all those technological innovation impacting energy innovation, and on the other, Russia's unprovoked and illegal invasion of Ukraine, which is creating added uncertainties in terms of global energy security. So the topic today is very timely for us to discuss the impact on communities. It is a topic of keen interest in Canada for several years, as we've been trying to do our best to address this issue of just and inclusive transitions. Both globally and domestically, we've been active. So allow me to describe briefly some of those key initiatives. First, and globally, we heard Dr. Birol speak to the Empowering People Initiative and the work happening at SEM. Canada has also been supportive of UK's efforts at the COP26 on that same declaration that was advanced, and some of the work that IEA has done around the Global Commission on people-centered energy transition. We've also been supportive of the work at the arena and a significant amount of work around gender equality, a topic of passion in Canada. Domestically, maybe three things to highlight. First, we're in the process of developing legislation to support Canadian workers on that topic of just transition, and this is very much part of our climate ambition and our goal to create 1 million new jobs across the country. Secondly, we're also kind of making progress as we're working toward our 2050 net zero goals in developing so-called regional strategies. We heard Senator Manchin describe the dynamics in West Virginia. The same is true in Canada. It's a very large country indeed, and what's being experienced in the East and the West and the North and Central Canada is very different and requires different solutions. So Minister Wilkinson is driving this effort to develop those local and regional strategies. And thirdly, is to develop skills, trainings, and support to make sure that our workers have a shot at securing those jobs. And maybe just to illustrate the point, all too often when we hear people maybe emphasize the more negative impact of what that shift occurring across our energy sector, we, I must say, quite respectfully disagree with that viewpoint. We see a lot of commonalities around what the future of the energy sector versus what it is today in terms of skills and competencies. If you look at a hydrogen production facility, for instance, using CCUS, it's actually quite similar to a refinery that is currently manned with chemists and also with engineers who can very much transition to those new skill sets. If you look at a biofuel plant, same thing. Grant you, like, not every job in the future of the clean energy sector has its twin jobs today, and we readily acknowledged that they may not always be a perfect fit, but there's quite a bit of overlap in terms of skills and opportunities for those workers. In some cases, however, there will be labor force requirements and adjustments. We readily acknowledge it. And that's why we feel that this thoughtful planning is really, really critical in order for us to get the job done. In this context, I'm pleased to announce a new collaboration that we're pleased to introduce today, working with the IEA and the Global Commission recommendations. We're looking to develop a further initiative to produce a report highlighting three elements. First, a deeper draw around the existing data and analysis on skills and employment. Second, doing some further research analysis on those good practices that you spoke to at the opening. And finally, to conduct case studies on the areas around focusing on reskilling, upskilling, recruiting, and training of those workers. And we're hopeful that some of those fruit of this work will be profiled at the SEM in Pittsburgh in the fall. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for starting this new work. I mean, I think one of the key things in the discussion in the Commission was this whole idea about the skills and what we need and how you can transfer that. I think that work will be extremely welcome in expanding our knowledge base. Thank you. So I will now turn the floor over to the Commission. Ditte, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to attend this important event at this time. As you know, the European Union is committed to supporting a just transition worldwide, in addition to at home in Europe and in our immediate neighbourhood. So we want to work with and help those that are making the green transition happen, and to make it happen in a fair way, so as to build a global energy system that is not just more sustainable, but also more equal, more democratic, and more transparent. It's a long-standing policy priority for the EU. For years, we have supported the coal regions in transition within the European Union and in our neighbourhood, the Western Balkans, Ukraine, and Moldova. And we want to reach out to more coal regions across the world. We are, to give you some concrete examples, in the final steps of developing with one of our member states, Germany, a platform that would extend cooperation and knowledge on economic just transition to a large number of coal regions around the world. Further from home, we have launched together with a number of countries, France, Germany, the United States, the United Kingdom, and South Africa, a Just Energy Transition Partnership, where we pledge to provide South Africa with $8.5 billion in the next years to accelerate the coal phase-out there and ensure a green transition together. In addition to the pledges from some of our member states, France and Germany, we would aim to contribute 30 million in grants and 1 billion in loans. Under the Clean Energy Ministerial, we're working with our United States partners, with Canada, with Chile and Denmark to improve the workforce training and skills development in clean energy transitions worldwide. And as you can see from this, just transition really is an area that favors teamwork across the globe. Alone, the challenges can be daunting, but solutions harder to come by. So it is in that spirit that we would like to thank the Chair and Fatih for leading the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions at this time. It's been a real privilege for the European Union to be part of this work, and we are convinced that the recommendations that have been issued by the Commission are both useful and relevant. We hope that we can come back and take stock on progress after some time so that we keep track of the good work and ensure follow-up. We at the European Commission also support the IEA in expanding its work on just transition, including with association countries, and we're keen to step up that cooperation. With its credibility in the energy domain, the International Energy Agency has a key role to play, keeping the political momentum going, and as a data-led organization, you in the IEA and we together are well placed to track progress and gather case studies and best practices in what could become a global just transition observatory. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As you highlighted in your intervention, I mean, this whole idea about the transition has been sort of very much embedded in the work of the Commission for the last many years. So it's very encouraging to hear that it's still the guiding star for the future. I think one of the key things we had in the Commission's work was also we had sort of the pleasure of having the voice of the youth delegation. So now we will hand over the floor to Mr. Udeh. The floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you, Excellencies. I'm joining from Cairo, and I'm happy to speak on behalf of the global youth of the SDG 7 youth constituency of the Major Group for Children and Youth. I regret not being able to join you physically in Paris, despite the best efforts of colleagues from IEA. Indeed, as have been raised earlier by colleagues in this commission, there's no energy transition that will be possible without the people being at the center as active producers, customers, owners, and generally as participants. Young people are crucial in driving people-centered energy transition, more so in ensuring that no one is left behind. It is extremely important that young people are part of decision-making at the highest level of energy space. For many years, young people working in the energy sector lacked a space of engagement in the various intergovernmental processes on clean energy. However, with many years of work and engagement with stakeholder countries, especially between 2018 and 2020, the SDG 7 Youth Constituency was established to bridge this gap. So far, we've grown to over 1,000 people in membership, spread across all the UN regions with great membership, made tremendous achievements in galvanizing youth actions and mobilizing young people behind specific advocacy while driving to support youth-led initiatives, not least with the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub, the first ever global repository of sustainable energy businesses, initiatives, and enterprises led by young people. And just to highlight two of the over 100 projects documented on this hub. First is a Liter of Light Bangladesh. It's a research-based social enterprise providing free of cost eco-friendly lighting solutions to poor communities such as coastal areas, hill-tract areas, islands, slums, and refugee camps in Bangladesh. It develops and distributes easy-to-make lighting solutions out of locally available materials. Liter of Light runs livelihood projects helping poor communities to learn their technology and to start their own micro-enterprise under Solopreneur project. Solopreneur made around 1,000 solar entrepreneurs, including Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar. This group trained over 100 voluntary organizations on light making so they can then serve their own localities. And they've lit up around 30 localities so far, including slums, coastal areas, and the Rohingya refugee camps. Another is Energy Shift. It enables citizens to participate in energy transition by enabling them to invest and co-own a part of a solar energy power plant, thus making good for the environment and making money at the same time. They finished a business incubator and pre-accelerator program and received solar impulse efficient solution level. They've set up a successful pilot project in the beginning of last year, and that is providing clean energy for solar installation in the company's office. But they all face quite some similar challenges in a bid to become active participants in the advancement of energy transition, including bureaucratic barriers. That includes complex processes for registration of startups, accounting and obtaining licenses, a race to bottom in terms of cost reduction of renewable energy installations, since local startups and SMEs have little chance to compete with multinational corporations. Investment spent on renewable energy projects is transferred abroad rather than reinvested in the local community through financing, research, creating jobs, and tax payments. Again, supporting young people to scale their innovative ideas is incredibly important. It's hard to understand why it's easier to provide funding to fly young people to conferences than providing just the same resource for investment in their ideas that can drive this transition. We must think about this. Also, more attention needs to be paid to people-facing aspects of energy transition. A lot of focus should be given to the transition of power supply, especially installation of solar PV plants on utility and residential scale. With about 3 billion people lacking access to clean cooking, clean heating needs to be at the center of energy transition because pollution and cost of dirty fuel directly impact on the health and safety of people, in particular children, women, and youth. It will require more financial commitment to provide the $41 billion annually needed to meet the clean cooking targets by 2030. Currently, only 1/3 of that was tracked in high-impact countries in Africa and Asia in 2018, according to SC for All data. So a public policy on clean energy is only equitable when all vulnerable groups in the country or communities are involved and benefiting from the solution. In addition to being active participants, as young people, we vow to hold to account both your pledges and action. We must remember that until we include people in every step as drivers of energy transition, we will be jumping the gun in the bid to achieve this energy transition. I thank you for your kind attention, and I apologize for my poor internet that has made it impossible to have my video on. I thank you again.
Thank you so much for the intervention, and especially thank you for highlighting the need of really making sure that young people have the ability and the capability to start up companies and create and try to scale their innovative ideas. I think this is an extremely powerful tool for creating opportunities, but also for creating new technologies that can actually help us solve the problem. So thank you for that important point. I think the last person on my world tour of speakers, we'll be going to India, who will also be joining us virtually. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Minister Jørgensen, and all excellencies, and Dr. Birol, Ms. Granholm, ladies and gentlemen, good evening from India, and greetings on behalf of the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. It has been an enriching experience for me to be a part of the IEA's Global Commission on People-Centric Clean Energy Transition. Our collaboration has built upon a wide array of perspectives, expertise, experiences, and actions to drive our common ambition to ensure equitable, fair, and inclusive clean energy transitions. It is important to humanize the process of energy transition by delving beyond energy sources, technology developments, and financing mechanisms. We must internalize that people, societies, and countries are more than the sum of their energy and emissions metrics. We must be considerate about the impacts of these changes on each of us, our communities and livelihoods, our quality of life, and our aspirations and opportunities. This is especially critical for developing countries such as India, which must balance the urgency of energy transition and climate action with developmental goals, intended to draw hundreds of millions of our citizens out of poverty and provide them first with basic amenities and conveniences of a decent life, and then avenues to grow, prosper, and flourish as their counterparts in the developed world. The energy transition of developing countries is thus deeply entwined with their economic transformation. India, for instance, has accelerated socio-economic development, especially at the grassroots, through targeted and sustained policies and reforms. It is striving to improve the financial inclusion, social inclusion, and security, and access to digital and physical connectivity of its citizens. I will share a few examples. In 2005, India started a national rural employment guarantee scheme to provide 100 days wage employment per year as a right to work. This has 152 million workers today and has significantly alleviated poverty. Since 2015, economically weaker Indians have opened 430 million basic bank accounts linked with biometric identity cards to receive cash welfare payments and avail low-cost financial services. Major strides in physical and digital connectivity have improved citizens' access to goods and services and boosted the private sector. India's 64 million medium, small, and micro enterprises, which employ 40% of its 450 million strong workforce, are being integrated into the economic mainstream via improved creditworthiness and competitive business practices. Entrepreneurship-oriented initiatives are driving the inclusion of new businesses, women-led enterprises, and local industries. The government is also delivering essentials such as energy, water, and healthcare to poor beneficiaries via the national missions. All villages and willing households were electrified in 2021 with the aim to provide 24/7 power for all. Almost 9 million free LPG cylinder connections have been given to poor households between 2016 and 2021 for safe and clean cooking. Over 19 million rural homes will have piped water by 2024, and India today has the world's largest public-funded healthcare program with 500 million beneficiaries. Amongst the extremely challenging COVID-19 pandemic, India received its highest ever foreign investment of US $82 billion in 2021. The International Monetary Fund predicts that India's GDP growth will rebound in this fiscal year and increase, and making India the fastest or amongst the fastest growing economies in the world. Energy access, justice, security, and sustainability are at the core of these developmental activities. Over 80% of India's energy needs are met by three fuels: coal, oil, and solid biomass, much of which is imported. This energy demand is expected to double in the next 20 years. The government, supported by public and private sectors, is actively working to transition to clean and indigenous sources of energy. India has over 150 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity and has targeted 500 gigawatts by 2030. It currently meets 40% of its power generation from non-fossil fuel sources and expects to increase that to 50% by 2030. It is developing green hydrogen to decarbonize its hard-to-abate sectors and has committed to gradually phasing down the use of coal for energy. India appreciates the co-benefits of clean energy transitions. For example, shifting from biomass burning to LPG for cooking is estimated to have prevented at least 150,000 indoor air pollution-related premature deaths and 1.8 million tons of PM 2.5 emissions in 2019 alone. India is also developing a national framework to nudge individual behavior, create enabling policies and institutions, and redefine social norms towards sustainable lifestyles to encourage mindful consumption of energy and resources. However, to ensure a just energy transition at the global level, it is important to acknowledge the huge disparity in per capita energy consumption of the developed and the developing countries. For example, the United States consumes approximately 13,000 kilowatt hours of energy per capita annually, compared to 4,000 kilowatt hours by China and 805 kilowatt hours by India and 145 kilowatt hours by Nigeria. And this clearly indicates the disparity. So these values reflect the standards of living and the quantum of economic activity as the global south develops its energy consumption. Cumulative and per capita should increase towards greater parity with the rest of the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much for sharing the experience and the impressive progress. It's extremely difficult to maneuver and strike the balance in the development as you were trying to do in India. Very, very impressive. I think actually that rounded out our list of speakers. We will now have 12 minutes for sort of a quick tour de table. Time flies in the company of good people. So I will highly recommend that you make your intervention short and to the point, so people would be allowed to speak. I think we did provide you with 6 questions that we could address in this part of the work. I mean, firstly, what are the key areas that we should prioritize in moving forward? I think that would be very interesting to get points on. And then secondly, I mean, Canada already shared some work they would be doing and shared internationally. I mean, what else can we do and share internationally? I think those would be the 2 I would be highlighting to focus on. So I'll open up the floor. I know already that the co-chair of the ministerial, Van der Straeten from Belgium, have to ask for a short comment. So if you want, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you also, but he's not here anymore, Dr. Fatih Birol, but Brian is here. Thank you for both your leadership on the commission we had on people-centered energy transitions and the time that we are living now, and invasion of Russia and Ukraine was mentioned before, is making clear how important this is, and that energy is not only about technical things, about infrastructure, but is foremost about people, about our citizens. And I had the opportunity to speak with our new colleague from Chile this morning, who was also putting this forward, that we should build a new economy, an energy economy that's based on what people can do, can achieve, and how to create welfare out of energy. So I was very happy to hear that Dr. Fatih Birol announced a new initiative from IEA, a new Energy Labour Council, and I think that should be one of our priorities, how that in these very specific times when we realize that energy is a matter of national security, of world security, that we can link this to labour, to create opportunities for all our citizens at home. What we can share internationally is all our examples. So what I've heard from the United States, what they are living through already, phasing out coal, and that we should help each other to guide our citizens through this transition, through change. Change is not easy for everyone, and it's a logical reaction to freeze before change, specifically in times like these, when we are experiencing war, when we are seeing that our energy bills are so high, and that it's important for us as policymakers to guide our citizens, our people, to this security, and to lay out policies that work. And we should share with each other these policies that work, so that we don't have to invent the warm water all by ourselves. And I think IEA can specifically play an important role here to bring our shared examples together, and that we can not only come up with a 10-point plan on gas and a 10-point plan on oil, but that the next 10-point plan would be how that we can work on this transition and to affordable bills for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think now you mentioned the 10-point plans. I guess you would be quite pleased to see there was quite a lot about sort of people changes in behavior, one of the key points you always made in the Commission. So I think that was well taken down by the IEA and put in the center of it. I think on my list I have now from the Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy from the African Union.
Good morning, everyone. Excellencies, I know I'm a guest to this committee, but I'm very much encouraged by the excellent work both the IEA and specifically this committee is making. I do believe that I will be speaking in the next session. However, I wanted to emphasize again and to insist on the centrality of the issue of energy for the well-being of people and as critical for socio-economic development and for poverty alleviation. Not only that, I think the recent events has also re-emphasized and highlighted what we have always said, that energy is central for peace and security. So again, let us remember that Africa has still 600 million people without access to electricity. We have 900 million people without access to clean energy and still are cutting forests to be able to cook. We cannot continue to see this as just yet another energy project or program. This should be central to our discussion, and by lifting or ensuring affordable, reliable, universal access to energy in Africa, we will be not only supporting Africa, but supporting the world. So again, this is a call to put all humans, especially Africans, at the heart of the energy access and affordable, reliable access to energy in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Some very important points to make here. Any final comments before I would try and do? No? Any? Okay, good. Then I'll try to wrap up our discussion. I mean, many extremely good and important points. I think I will start actually with the introduction by Granholm, where she really sort of emphasized that it all comes down to people. Basically, that's the starting point of all of the discussions that we're having, and you can have the data from the IEA. I mean, Fatih Birol clearly mentioned that you have all of these jobs, you have all of these opportunities that will be created. But as many of you emphasize, those jobs will not be the same as the ones that are displaced. So that's really one of the key issues. I mean, how can you do the retraining? How can you create the opportunities to the people that they can actually do that? And as also mentioned by our youth delegate, I mean, one thing is that you could create opportunities for new jobs. The other thing is to create opportunities for new companies that can actually come in, and thereby people sort of make their own company and try to do that change. So that was some of the key things. We have also heard the importance of government interventions, that they should be done, of course, focused in the right way. And if you do that, you can have a very powerful tool to change that direction. And of course, if you want to do this in the right way, I think Senator Manchin mentioned that, of course, you need to listen to the people. This idea about that you actually have to have a voice. Many of you also mentioned various programs where you included different ways of having the voice heard of minorities, different regions, different kind of skill groups. I think that was also one of the key things. Also, quite a lot of emphasis on the coal industry, of course. I think one of the things that came out in the work of the Commission, which surprised me a bit, was that the number of people working in the coal industry globally is actually a higher number than the citizen of Denmark. So sometimes we do think we have big problems in our small country, but compared on the global scale, we do not. I mean, there are much bigger issues, and trying to balance that, as was emphasized in the intervention by India, that you have to strike this balance of development where you both have the transition towards the clean energy, but also the transition towards having jobs and decent jobs. Then I think my final remark was, as was also mentioned by Sharan Burrow, it's also about good jobs. I mean, it's not just any job. I mean, you have to transition people and give them opportunity to create something that is at least as good as what they have. You can't just say that, okay, you can have this very poorly paid job in a not so interesting industry. So I think you need to put all of that into place in order to do that. I think it's important now that when we move forward, I mean, Fatih already mentioned that he's creating another place to do this work within the IEA. We have it as part of ministerial mandates that the People Center should be very key and focused on it. And I think Denmark, we will try to see how we can embed this in the work that we're doing. For instance, we are quite engaged in Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance and the Powering Past Coal. Both of the alliances really key on shutting something down. And when you're shutting something down, you should have this as a core guiding principle that you should keep the people in there. So we are very dependent on a just and clean energy transition. So I think with the work from the Commission, if you haven't read it, as I said, please do. We have a very good starting point, but we should remember that it's only a starting point, that we need to put this into action, and we should use this as a guiding star to guide our way forward in all the things we do from now on. So thank you very much for showing up. A final comment? Yes?
If I could just ask one question. Supply chains, knowing what COVID did to all of us worldwide, and the supply chains and the challenges we've had with supply chains and what it's done with inflation, and it's contributed quite a bit of pain all over the world. Are people in different countries looking more at trying to basically what they play to their strengths in their own countries, what you have resources to do the best you can without a total dependency on supply chains, which we know can be disrupted or broken completely? Is that shift going on right now?
To answer it from a European perspective, I think one of the shifts that is definitely going on right now is the shift away from Russian gas. I mean, that shift is going on extremely fast. And I think the second one is the one that we will be discussing also as part of the new work of the IEA on critical minerals. I think you also mentioned that in your intervention, that we need really to look into where are we sourcing those and how dependent are our industry of that. And I think the US has been a leader in that together with other countries. Europe, we are looking into that, but it is definitely something that has been coming up, and much more recently, where you can see the disruption that had happened to the value chain. So this will clearly also be on the agenda. And it's actually also, yeah, it's also in the recommendation that is something that you need to put into place in order to ensure your people to get energy security very much on the dependency on the value chain. So that would be in the afternoon. That spurred some interest.
Yes, just very, very briefly, it's a timely question. It's almost as if you planted it. The IEA and Australia are co-hosting a forum in Sydney in July to discuss supply chain resilience in the energy sector and to talk precisely about these sorts of issues. So we welcome all of you to that forum, and I'm happy to follow up with anyone here about the details of that. Thank you.
I wanted to do a follow-up because you mentioned the COVID crisis. And indeed, when the crisis is happening, we are confronted with its consequences. But more often, we don't react on it. So, for example, when we had the financial crisis and the COVID crisis, I do believe that value chains were a very important topic after the COVID crisis, but I don't feel that we reacted enough. And so let's not waste this opportunity to really look into supply chains, value chains also, with really the view of resilience. And then we also need to talk about circularity, circular economy, because this can close the gap to carbon neutral. And this is a topic that will be discussed within IEA, but that we should continue to develop, because otherwise if we lose the topic, then we are not going to make the energy transition in time.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the question of the dear US Senator very good. And of course, it is very important to think about strategic autonomy in not only reducing, of course, our dependence on Russian gas, but in a broader perspective. At the same token, we are here at the premises of the OECD. And we should not confuse strategic autonomy with the danger of protectionism. We are still here in the premises where we are very much in favor of open, free markets. Thank you.
I think before we turn it into an open market debate, I think I would allow to thank all of you for the participation. Highly recommend that you read the report, as I mentioned before, and I'm looking very much forward to continue working with the IEA on this extremely important issue. Thank you for showing up.